Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. Sorry, I am 1 minute late. I had to upload a new version of my browser to be able to do the live for some reason. So thank you again for being here. If you're jumping on either live with me or you're on the replay, please let me know where you're from and what brought you here, what kind of attracted you to this. I'd really love to know that. So today what I'm going to be talking about is how to create inclusion in the world. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll also talk a little bit about it at the end of how you can work with me, learning a bit more about inclusiveness in the world. So I'll talk about that a little bit at the end because it's really exciting and I want to share that with you. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say, hello. If you don't know me, my name is Louise O'Reilly. I am the founder and owner of Ascension Personal Development Academy. It is a place of learning for anything related to personal, spiritual, or business development. So this part is a little bit more of the personal and spiritual development side of stuff, but I'm really hoping that it becomes part of the business development too, and in changing a bit of the culture that happens in workplaces as well. So let me just have a quick sip. I had a little bit of a coughing fit before this. Okay. Also, what I do is I own another business, which is www.louiseoreilly.com.au, and that is a place where I do a lot of my humanitarian type stuff. It's a place where I do my blogging and lots of writing, and I talk about human rights and more specifically Aboriginal human rights, Aboriginal culture and people. Hi Sharon, so glad you're joining me. How did you hear about this? In my blog website, I talk about, like I said, human rights and Aboriginal human rights. I am a Aboriginal woman. I'm a Wadawa Noongar woman. So this is very close to me, this topic in particular and being included, which kind of leads on to me asking if you are watching either live or in the replay, do you belong to a marginalised group like myself? I would just like to know if you belong to that, and just let me know and we can get connected that way. And now, I'm really sorry, my throat is playing up on me, but I want to talk to you a bit about my story and why this is something that's important to me in creating more inclusion in the world. So, pretty much me growing up, I did find it a little bit hard finding my place. I felt like I didn't fit in and I felt like I didn't belong. And that was because a lot of time, like through school, my culture wasn't really included in school. The language wasn't included in school until particular days, which made me think, well, is there something not okay with me? Is there something not okay with who I am? And is that something that shouldn't be celebrated or valued in my school community? Not only that, I saw it in news media. I saw it when I went to the store. I would see how me looking the way I do, I was treated very differently to my mum. And I would just see lots of different ways that there was almost, it wasn't equal the way we were treated. It wasn't equal in the way community things are represented. And I found that a lot of the time I would feel excluded from the things because the types of culture and the types of things they were talking about and doing didn't really fit in with me, and I wasn't directly part of that. And growing up, so I found it hard to feel like I belonged in the community. And then I kind of got through that though. I found it hard to find my identity, but I did work through it. With personal development, I did work through it. And I would have been fine just to go on as I was and just accept the way things are. But then I went and had, 2 children. Oh, there you go. 2 children. And then that got me thinking, I don't want my children to be going through the same things that I went through growing up. It was really tough. And I found it really hard to really work with my identity. And a lot of people say you get to choose your identity. For me, this wasn't the case. For me, my identity was something I felt like was embedded on my heart. And even though it was really hard to be part of the Aboriginal community and identify as an Aboriginal person, that's what I needed to do because that's who I was. And I just found it really difficult to do that, which may sound really strange for a lot of people. They may not identify with that concept at all. So basically what I'm doing now is going, well, I don't want my children to grow up like that. I don't want my children to feel like they don't belong. I don't want my children to feel like that they're not okay, or they're not accepted, or they're not valued, all those kind of things. So now let's move into talking about what you can do to create a more inclusive world. So I just wanted to give you that bit of the background so that we can move into that next step, and that you can really understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. So something you can do in regards to anything you have in our community and in our culture and in our society is just become a bit more mindful of who's included and who's not included in the different things. So you can just mindfully ask, does this include all members of my community? Is there anyone that it doesn't include? Are all people in my community represented in this? So, and also, is there anyone that is being portrayed in a negative or bad light? And I'm talking about whole groups of people. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about big groups of people kind of all being painted with the same brush and negatively painted with that same brush. So those are some of the things that you can ask. So, you know, you can look at, I don't know who you identify with, what group of people you identify with, but, you know, are people with disabilities being represented? Are Aboriginal people or First Nations people being represented? Are people with that identify with different genders being represented? Are all the sexes being represented? Are different ages being represented? These are all things that you can look at. And I know some people will say it's hard to include everyone, but I would say phooey to that. I would just say that there are people out there who are very convinced that the way things are okay, and I would say they are not. I personally would say they are not. And also, there are lots of people who are really afraid of change and what that change might be. So for those of you who are feeling a bit of, I guess, a bit of fear or anxiety around things changing, around social norms changing and things like that, I've recently just kind of reframed that to go, well, it's not necessarily change. What if we look at it, it's innovation? And we all love innovation because then we know that we're going to get a better version of what we already have. So this isn't about changing something for the sake of changing it. It's about changing something because it's needed in the world, because it's not working for a lot of people in the world, and it's really creating groups and separating us as people and as a community because of some of the things that we may not even be aware that we're doing, some of the things that are normal. So if we look at it in a way that it's about innovation, how can we all make this better for all of us? I think that's a really exciting way at looking at it. So some of the things that you can look at, if you just want to do like a bit of an exercise on, you know, your mindfulness around this kind of thing, is news media. Have a look at, what they're showing, what they're saying, how they're saying it, all those kind of things, and come to your own conclusions on whether that's inclusive or exclusive of certain groups of people. Because at the end of the day, it's not about grouping people together. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this, my simplest way to explain this. It's more about how do we get these people who are all different parts of the group, all different parts of the community, how do we get them together as one? And at the end of the day, it's not about giving people label or groups labels. It's about saying we are all people. End of story. We are all people, and as people, we are all connected. And that way, if we are all regarded as equal people, then that way, that's how the inclusion happens. It's just we're people and we're all the same. Other things you can look at is the image associations that happen in like advertisements, on your news, just on promos in your newspapers. Everywhere you see any kind of visual imagery or stimulation, have a look at that. You can have a look at social behaviour. You can have a look at bodily behaviour. So something you can really look at is things like casual racism and how that happens and how that works. You can look at, there's more than enough experiments, social experiments that they've done on YouTube and things like that, that look at how people react to different groups of people. You could have a look at how the general public treat someone who may be homeless at the time, and that you can look at that. You can look at what's her name, Jane. I cannot recall her name, but she has the brown eye, blue eye experiment. You can have a look at that. You can have a look at lots of those different things and just see how in the society there are certain ways that people behave in regards to certain groups of people. And it's not because of their one-on experience they have, but more about what they've been told and what they've been fed. So it's like a conditioning. They feel a certain way about a certain group of people because of what they've constantly been exposed to. In reality, they don't have any experience with that person as an individual. And at the end of the day, we are all individuals, and we don't all behave or act the same way or have the same beliefs or anything as anyone else. What else can you look at? You can have a look at things. What does the government see as important, and what do they express as being important in the government? So that's the kind of policies that they support and policies they don't support. Who's included and excluded in those things? A lot of the time, they will go with the majority of people, but not make any emphasis or show any, value towards some of those marginalised groups. And I'm saying marginalised and not minority groups, because there are marginalised groups that aren't a minority. For example, women are a marginalised group, though we're not the minority. So it's just opening up different ways to look at it and different ways that we can have more inclusion in these things. And something that was really important to me, and because I am a writer, I'm a blogger, and I love communications, so I'm really in love with language and words. And the more and more I got to use words and learn about words and how they're used and why they're used and what you can create from them, the more I realized that the normal language or everyday language that we're using in the Australian culture, and I've certainly viewed in other cultures and other countries as well, is that there is very, very prominent amounts of exclusion of certain community members, or certain ways that they've been positioned, or the certain tone that's used. There is a lack of representation, and there is a lack of having different perspectives represented in language. So that's where I'm really passionate about at the moment, and that's where I want to start making an impact in the world and start changing things so my kids don't have to go through that same kind of pain that I went through growing up. So I'm really focusing on cultural inclusion in language. And so what I've decided to do is offer a free 5-day course. It will be in a Facebook group, and I'll be hosting 5 consecutive days of training on how to use culturally inclusive language. And in there, I will talk about the foundations of language, and it will basically it's like a culturally inclusive language 101 class, essentially. And so that's free. I'm offering that to anyone who wants to join up. I will pop a link if you would like to sign up to that in the comments. I would love for you to come. And if you know anyone else who may be interested, please tell them about it. Because if we're going to be changing the culture of language, which is something I really want to do, I need to have as many people on board or learning about it, just being aware of it as possible. So if you could tell people about it, I would be very appreciative of that, and I would love to have you join me along that journey. So that is about it for the cultural inclusion and about creating more inclusion in the world in general. If you would like to know anything more about that, if you have any questions for me, pop them in the comments. Like I said, if you would like to sign up to the free course, I will pop the link into the comments section. I want to thank you very much for listening to me, to all the people who are watching live and to all the replay viewers. If you are watching the replay, put #replay so I can always come back and answer any of your questions later on. So that's all from me. I'm looking at doing a few more videos about this kind of subject over the next couple of weeks, so I hope you come and join me there. Bye for now.